He's the jock.
And she's the journalist.
And you're listening to the J&J Broadcast. I'm Shannon Green, the journalist, joined by Max Starks, the jock. Max, we are going to jump into it this week. So we saw a pair of NBA super teams go down in flames in week one. The New York Knicks lost 117-88 to the Cleveland Cavaliers, which they're the reigning NBA champions. Golden State lost to the Spurs 129-100. Do you think this could be an early indication that the age of the super teams is slowly dying off?
No, I don't think so. I don't think you could take a sample just from one game being the season opener, because you look at who they went up against. San Antonio Spurs had the Warriors, and let's just face it, the Spurs are the New England Patriots of the NBA. Whoever they put in the lineup is going to be successful. If you're quasi-mediocre, you become a superstar on San Antonio, just like Belichick and his whole system that he has. Greg Popovich is the godfather of the NBA, so no. And then Cleveland, let's just face it, Cleveland is unstoppable right now as a city unless you play for a team called the Browns. So I don't think so. I think we need a larger sample size.
You and this doggone obsession with the Cleveland Browns has got to stop, Mac. Got to stop. We got to
can't stop, won't stop.
This hateration continues. You know, the only thought I would add to this is I'm really confused to figure out how the Knicks are considered a super team. Because unless like Damian Lillard or Kawhi Leonard or Kyrie Irving suddenly joins the Knicks, I just don't personally see Carmelo Anthony and Derrick Rose alone being like the super team, only because I think you define it by having high scorers on your team. That's what this new age is about. So I'm just not sure if they're in that conversation yet. That's my only thought.
But Derrick Rose, he was the former number one overall pick. Carmelo Anthony, the unstoppable offense machine.
I'll give you Carmelo. Yeah, Carmelo is definitely a premier scorer. I'm not talking about him, but come on.
Derrick Rose supposed to be that dude. And then you got old boy, pork and beans. Wasn't it Porzingis? You got him. and you got Noah.
He's not a scorer. That's not what he does.
He is a guy to pass the ball to Carmelo Anthony and Derrick Rose. That's what he's there for.
Okay.
Moving on. How about this? If Houston continues to stumble, how much will that hurt Tom Herman's Power 5 job chances?
I don't think it's going to hurt him terribly, only because he was the offensive coordinator of Ohio State a few years ago when they won the national championship. So I think that's going to buy him a little bit of life. Here's what I would be concerned about is that Houston's rise came very quickly, and their fall is also coming pretty quickly as well. You have to be a little bit concerned about a program that could lose to SMU in the manner in which they did. SMU is not a premier team. Their defense was about 109 out of 128 FBS teams, and they sacked Greg Ward Jr. 7 times in that game. So that's telling me that this is a team that really has lost some level of leadership, and I don't know if that's more player-driven or if they're just worried about their coach leaving. So I don't know. We just haven't seen enough out of Tom Herman yet in terms of us just christening him as the next thing. I don't know. He could end up being another Lane Kiffin for all we know. I don't think he will because I think he's a very smart coach, but it's a little troubling to see what's going on there.
And I agree with you. I think when you look at this, Tom Herman, like you said, has a resume. And what he's done for Houston, body of work, not just these most recent games, still gives him a legitimate shot. And like you said, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. We don't know what has been discussed. We don't know what his frustrations have been through this process, or even the players' frustrations, hearing the rumors go about. So I don't think it hurts his chances. I mean, once again, I don't know if he actually would leave Houston still. It had to be the perfect job.
Well, here's what we do know about Mr. 1J Cutler. He is very honest, apparently. He was recently asked about John Fox choosing him to start, and basically what he said was he doesn't have a choice. And then he went on to say that there hasn't been a strain in their relationship, and they're very open and honest about being on the same page. For those who don't know, Brian Hoyer, the backup, broke his arm, so now Cutler has to come back in after recovering from a broken thumb. Max, what do you make of Jay Cutler's comments?
I'm going to be honest. I didn't want to see Jay Cutler come back because Brian Hoyer was doing such a tremendous job. And Jay Cutler's had so many years to prove himself as the franchise quarterback of the Chicago Bears. And honestly, if Brian Hoyer was not injured, I was going to say bye-bye Jay Cutler. But now, in light of current situations and circumstances, he now gets one more last chance to prove himself to the Chicago Bears and the organization and the fan base that he is a quality quarterback. Because right now, I don't see it. I'm looking at his stats, and he only has, in 2 games, 373 yards total passing, with 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions.
I mean, I appreciate the honesty. I think one thing about Jay Cutler that we've always known is that he's a very blunt person, and he's not the stereotypical polished politician quarterback. But it does make me curious about his confidence level. I mean, when someone says, I guess you don't have a choice, you have to go with me, that doesn't engender a lot of confidence to say, hey, I've been working on fixing some mistakes, and I know I haven't been doing that well, but I'm going to come back strong. So he definitely comes off almost a little jaded a bit. I mean, I don't know, maybe that's a bit of a reach, but
Jay is jaded.
Jay's more jaded. So yeah, I'd be a little bit concerned if I was a Bears fan, but we'll see what happens. Monday night, he's got to make it happen against the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, and I don't see that happening. I'll tell you what I do see happening down there in the Sunshine State. Bobby Bowden endorses Donald Trump. Now, what do you believe the percentage of Trump versus Clinton supporters is there between the NBA and the NFL?
Well, daggum.
Well,
I don't say that I think football, for sure, there's no question. If anybody who's been around the sport knows some of the personalities in the sport, it's definitely a conservative, Republican-leaning audience. More so
ownership and coaching.
Well, ownership and coaches. I would say a lot of coaches, too. And Tom Brady, who was sporting Donald Trump, make America great again in his locker and didn't want to talk about it. So I definitely think, I'd say broad-based figure, maybe 60%. I would go with Donald Trump. NBA, I think, is definitely a very different number. The culture of the NBA is certainly much different. I mean, Greg Popovich was very open talking about police brutality and an array of issues, something you would definitely not see a NFL coach doing, that's for sure. So maybe like 20%. What do you think?
Thank you for having this interview. I'm gone. No, that was my Tom Brady. Sorry, that was my Tom Brady impression, but I think you're right. I think there is a broad-based number of ownership and coaches who vie on the side of Donald Trump. I mean, obviously, my former team, the Steelers, would be the vast minority that completely everybody top to bottom is going to be Democratic. Yeah, I mean, one Dan Rooney became an ambassador to Ireland under Obama's watch, and only one to openly endorse Obama at a time when that was not popular. So I would say, yeah, you're looking at a little over half of the owners, and then NBA, I'm going at 25 to 30% maybe. But if we're talking players, I give Donald Trump maybe 40% of players between both leagues.
Well, one thing that I think is going to draw people together, and already has been the World Series. These are two teams that are beloved because both of them have sucked for a long time, Chicago Cubs and Cleveland Indians. Max, when you look at this underdog storyline, who is the bigger underdog that you're rooting for?
I don't think it gets any more underdogish than the Chicago Cubs. It has been 108 years since they've won a championship. And the last time they've had an appearance, I mean, you still got to go back 70-plus years. So the Cubs, and they're the team that everybody, if you go to Chicago, there's so many more Cubs fans than there are White Sox fans. And it is just obnoxious how much Cubs stuff you hear. You know, I was with Bill Murray a couple of weeks back at a golf tournament, and he was wearing it looked like 1972, like Chicago Cubs windbreaker, and then he was flying to the game that following day. So, you know, there's some hardcore fans that have been waiting for this to happen, and it's just one of those things kind of been laughable over the years. And in Cleveland, hasn't been as long. I mean, they went to the World Series twice in the 90s. You know, and that was a whole major league phase of movies and, you know, Kenny Lofton and all those guys. So, you know, I think it's definitely the Cubbies that are on there. And I'm rooting for the Cubbies to win it because I just want to hear Chicago fans be quiet for once.
I think just because you said the Cubs, now I'm going to say the Indians just because I like to disagree. I mean, that's how I roll.
It is sacrilegious what they're doing. Why won't they change their mascot? Change the mascot.
Yeah, I mean, politics aside, I get it. I still feel like Cleveland is, they're quite an underdog. I know they had some pockets of success in the 90s, but overall, as a sports city, I would still say Cleveland is still in that mix. Yes, they just won with the Cavs, the first NBA championship ever in the history of their NBA franchise. So let's not get carried away here like Cleveland's just winning everything. Look at the Browns. So.
The Browns had NFL World Championships before they became Super Bowls. That was Jim Brown era.
Really?
No. It doesn't count? Okay.
No.
I was trying. I was reaching.
You did reach a little bit. You reached. But so I'm just going to say the Indians, because they were the underdogs coming into this series. They won Game 1. More than 63% of the teams that win Game 1 have a very good shot at winning the pennant. So I'll say Cleveland. My mom is actually from Akron, so I have family in Ohio. My dad's from Chicago, so kind of like an interesting mix of my family. But yeah, I'll roll with Cleveland.
Well, anyways, let's end this on a happy note, and it's not happy at all. I say that with a full glass of sarcasm. Did you get a chance to watch The Walking Dead?
Yeah, and
okay. Well, I'm gonna let you loose. Okay. Did The Walking Dead go too far in killing off Abraham and Glenn? And I'm sorry, I probably should have said spoiler alert before I said this question, but it's a broadcast, and if you haven't watched it, you're not a real fan anyways. So we could talk about this almost a week removed from it. So if Twitter didn't spoil it, Facebook didn't spoil it, Instagram tributes didn't spoil it, then don't blame it on the jock and the journalist. Shannon?
Well, speaking of Twitter spoiling things, I was quite pissed off when I didn't get home quick enough, apparently, and I just happened to see my social media account, my Twitter account, and someone tweeted out that Glenn died, and I literally wanted to throw my phone across the room, because I'm like, dude, can you just wait? Especially when it comes to shows like this, like, shut your pie hole. Let me watch the show. Give me at least 24 hours. That being said, as far as killing Glenn and Abraham, yes, they absolutely went too far. I really needed a bereavement day from work because I'm traumatized right now. That was just way too much, watching the eyeballs pop out and, the pregnant wife. I can't. Like, I'm in shock. I'm angry, and I'm mourning.
Well, being that I was a Walking Dead fan before the series, I read the comics, and I haven't read them most recently, but I definitely read through 100.
Graphic novels.
Yes, graphic novels, grown man comic book. Same thing. At least that's what I tell my wife. But, so I'm a little bit deeper into where the show is currently at this moment. I've seen a little bit beyond it. And for the people that have watched the shows and don't read the comics or graphic novels, this actually happened in the comic. Glenn was bludgeoned to death by Negan. So I was already prepared mentally that Glenn could be a casualty. What didn't go too well was the Abraham in the same episode. That was the curveball. And then you take Daryl, who, Daryl's like the heart and soul. He's like Rick's soulmate. You take him and you separate him from the group. It just, I was dejected. I walked around my house after the episode, just lost.
I'm feeling more depressed now.
Boom! Happy days. Well, we've hit the end of another Pick 6 broadcast. Be sure to like us on Facebook @JockandJournalist and follow us on Twitter @JockJournalist. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week.